All right, good morning. We're going to get started. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Atlanta City Council City Utilities Committee. I'm Howard Troop, chair of the committee. To my immediate right, your left, is Vice Chair Dustin Hillis. We have the Honorable Alex Wan on the far left, and Liliana Bakhtiari is to my immediate left, so we constitute a quorum. So we're going to lock and load here. I will make a motion to adopt the agenda. Second by Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, the agenda's been adopted. You've all poured over the minutes of the prior meeting. I will make a motion to adopt them. Second by Bakhtiari. Let's open that vote.
The vote is open. Please vote.
Please vote.
The vote is closed.
Okay. Public comment. Brother Muhammad. Oops, sorry. There you go.
Appreciative to be a representative of the cosmos and the universe of the mother nature. And I call on the kinetic, indigenous, antiquity, energies of our ancestors to teach my spirit consciousness every day. I come here today and speak about the good that Mayor Dickinson has done for the constituents that had needed services in people time. I appreciate that very much because that represents the energy of the mother of the universe, the daughter of the earth, the father who teaches the man, the wisdom, the daughter, the creativity, and the son who manifests the physical creativities of humanity. So I call on you members of this council. As you know, we're getting ready for a cold period now, and people's on the street. The people that is on the street need someone to recognize that they can speak up for them. It's just like your 5 fingers. The elements of nature can be used to describe that. But if you lose one, you can't have the force. So when you have the man, now what we call the patriarchal society, had hijacked the daughter of the earth. Therefore, you don't have the will of the 360 degrees, which make holistic valuation for the creator of the heaven and earth. The God you call, he has no need for that energy that is not conducive to resurrecting the condition for humanity. And when you have people that look like Brother Anthony Muhammad, I say here in Atlanta, we had the largest number of young men locked up. Largest number of men don't have access. How they got to deal with public utilities? When you have brothers on the street, don't have a place to stay. They have a home, but the mother not able to pay the high rent. They find ways to get into trouble, and then they get locked up. But if we was able to step in and do something good for them, it would be able to eliminate that waste of energy. And I end it like this. I am that I am thankful and appreciative to be the mother representative of the universe, of the indigenous, kinetic, antiquity ancestors, spiritual energy that teach my soul consciousness every day. And I'm not a believer in a Roman Catholic Church religion, no more. In your Bible scripture, from Genesis to Revelation, not one person, those 66 books were born from a woman womb canal. So I ask you, member, step up like Mr. Mayor Dixon did. And I apologize, Ms. Broom, when I was at that work for the Department of Watershed Management, and I find out that you had something very important to attend, and I apologize. Mayor, Metro at Hotel, Assalamu alaikum, Ashe, and Ashe.
All right, thank you. And we have been joined by Andrea Boone and Jason Winston. Good morning. All right, it's been recommended that our first order of business would be to pull up a held item, which is a nomination. The nominee is here, and he would probably appreciate being released on his own recognizance. And I'm speaking of 22C 5134. This is a communication from Pierre Gaither, Executive Director of the Atlanta Board of Education, submitting the reappointment of himself to serve as a member of the Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission. Appointment is for a term of 2 years to begin retroactively March 5th of this year and expire March 4th of 2024. Mr. Gaither, how are you? Good morning. Well, thank you for giving us this opportunity. Do you have any remarks you'd like to make?
Nope. I do want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to continue to serve. I've had an opportunity to do this since the beginning of this committee and look forward to continue to serve as a connector to Atlanta Public Schools in this work.
Motion to approve by Warren, second by Hillis. No other comments or questions? Ms. Boone, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to just commend Mr. Pierre Gaither. He is a proud resident of Council District 10. He and his wife are active members in their community. And Mr. Gaither, thank you for offering this service. We wish you well. Thank you.
All right. Let's open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, Mr. Gaither, it's unanimous. Thank you. It's been recommended, and I'm willing to follow the recommendation, that we get through our action items first and then take up the DPW quarterly report. So if there's no objections, let's, no? Yeah? Okay. Okay, let's follow that course. Could we please hear a sounding of the first reads?
Item number 1, 22-0-1683, an ordinance by City Utilities Committee to ratify services rendered in connection with Cooperative Purchasing Agreement FC 1190642, cellular and wireline router services with AT&T Mobility National Accounts, LLC, utilizing Georgia Technology Authority contract number 9800 GTA 794A, beginning July 1st, 2022, through the execution of the First Amendment to the agreement, to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the First Amendment to the agreement, to extend the term of the agreement retroactively effective from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2024, with 3 one-year renewal options on behalf of the Department of Watershed Management in an amount not to exceed $180,000.00, and to add Atlanta Information Management as an authorized user in an amount not to exceed $16,497.40. All contracted work shall be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account numbers listed and for other purposes. An ordinance by City Utilities Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the FY 2022 Water and Wastewater Renewal and Extension Fund and Series 2021 Water and Wastewater Commercial Paper Notes budget in the amount of $21,310,000.00 to transfer funds from the watershed reserves for appropriations and add funds to the Butler Street Trunk Relief System Improvement Projects and for other purposes. Item number 3, 22-0-1685, an ordinance by City Utilities Committee authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the FY 2023 Water and Wastewater Renewal and Extension Fund budget in the amount of $4,212,440.00 to transfer funds from watershed reserves for appropriations and add funds to the North Fork Storage Tank and Pump Station Project and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. These will return to us at our next meeting. That takes us to Section H of the regular agenda, resolutions, first of which is 22R4191, This would be a resolution by utilities authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute the First Amendment to the contract indicated yard debris processing, hauling, and diversion program with TAG Grinding Services, Inc. on behalf of Public Works to add funding for the Department of Parks and Rec in an amount not to exceed $75,000. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from, etc.
Morning, Chairman Shook and members of council. This resolution adds funding to an existing contract to grind vegetative debris, including trees, which is what the Department of Parks uses this contract for. Previously, this was managed by DPW. Last year, we took on the contract to manage our own vegetative debris. It was an estimate that we used to put in the original contract, and the amount fluctuates basically based on the number of trees that fall. And so we're asking to make sure we have enough funding to continue service.
Okay, we've been joined by Antonio Lewis. Questions or comments? Motion to approve by Ms. Boone, second by Juan. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
The vote is open.
Lewis, yes.
The vote is closed.
All right, 7-0. Resolution passes. That takes us to 22R4192, resolution by City Utilities Committee authorizing the mayor's designee to execute the First Amendment to the agreement indicated annual contract for water distribution system rehabilitation and improvements with GS Construction and Chemi Construction joint venture on behalf of Watershed to add funding for work performed as agreed between the parties in an amount not to exceed $730,945.26. All work will be charged to and paid from, etc. Ms. Satterwhite.
Good afternoon, Chairman Shook and council members. I'm Eric Satterwhite, Deputy Commissioner for the Office of Linear Infrastructure Operations. The purpose of this legislation is to request additional funding for FC 10469B, annual contract for water distribution system rehabilitation and improvements. Amendment number 1, up to $730,945.26. The legislation before you is requesting authorization to amend Contract FC 10649B, one of 3 annual contracts for water distribution system rehabilitation and improvements. The annual contracts were issued for services needed for the installation of new water mains, fire hydrants, valves, and large meters, as well as general maintenance of 2,800 miles of piping and appurtenances within the city's water distribution system. The initial term of this agreement is for 3 years, effective January 9th, 2020 through January 8th, 2023, with an option to renew for 2 one-year periods at the city's discretion. The city and the vendor were in a dispute regarding how itemized tasks in the contracts were billed. Under the terms of the agreement, the city was authorized to enter into mediation to settle the dispute. The successful mediation resulted in the city and contractor agreeing to resolve all claims for payment in an amount not to exceed $730,945.26. The drafting issue with itemized tasks in the contract has now been resolved so that disagreement on the terms will be minimized in the future. The department is requesting to amend the agreement consistent with the outcome of the mediation. This concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Okay. Well, this is a little bit different. In fact, I'm trying to remember the last time something came to us formatted in this fashion. So the additional funding satisfies what was agreed upon between the 2 parties in advance, which was to go to a mediator, correct?
Correct.
And what party performed the mediator's role?
Excuse me?
Who was the mediator?
The mediator was
Roger Bandar, Law Department. So it was George Shrell. He's a construction contract expert mediator. The parties, pursuant to the terms of the agreement, agreed to the mediator.
So then you went into this with the city and the vendor presumably farther apart than this, so could you describe how this discussion began and what led to the initiation of the dispute?
Want me to take that?
Go ahead, you should.
Sure. I had to be a little careful what I say on the microphone outside of executive session, but in a nutshell, it came down to an interpretation of certain line items, what was included in a line item and what was separate. For instance, a big point of contention was something called a point excavation or site investigations included in a line item, or were they separate? So basically digging holes and exploring holes, were they included in, say, a stretch of sewer line repair, or was that a separate line item of payment? So there were some vagaries in the terms of the contract. We took one position, the contractor took another. We couldn't reach agreement amongst ourselves, so we availed ourselves of the terms of the contract, which says you should seek mediation to resolve any disputes, and we followed the course of that, and we ultimately settled on the mediator's recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to yield to Mr. Wan and then Mr. Hillis.
All right, this is more kind of technical on the contract side. So we went into this in 2019 with a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewals, correct? This dispute came up. Are we still within that first 3-year period?
Yes, we are.
And then what's the timing on, does this conclude our relationship and our contractual relationship with this entity, or we just satisfy this piece, but we still have a good relationship, we're going to keep on going on, doing more work?
So the contract, the money is done as far as the contract goes, so this contract is over with.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wan. I'll take over. Chairman Shook had to step out. My question is, well, Councilmember Wan kind of asked it, but what is our relationship with this contractor given this dispute? Do we still want to, I know this contract has expired, but what is on their report, either in watershed or procurement, that details this dispute, or we may or may not want to do business with them in the future?
We're currently not doing business with them.
But when things like when things like this happen, who has and maintains those details of, if there's something in 2 years and they bid on something, whose responsibility is it? Maybe it's both, either DWM or the Office of Procurement, to kind of refresh our memories as to what has happened in the past when and if they bid on another city contract.
Good morning, CM Hillis, Keita Browning, Department of Watershed Management. As you know, typically once contracts conclude, we complete a contractor's evaluation form, which will detail all of our interactions and performance of a contractor. So for this particular contract, we would complete that form.
And then that report is maintained within Watershed, or does procurement also get a copy of that?
We keep a copy and we submit it to the Department of Procurement.
All right, thank you for that. I will hand it back over to Chairman Shook. That's all the speakers currently. Councilmember Lewis.
Thank you.
So, and just might be a question for procurement. Would that be illegal to flag this company as a company we just won't deal with anymore?
Yeah.
I think, when we are evaluating suppliers for the next go around, they can always bid, but during the evaluation piece, they may score low points that may perhaps not qualify them to getting an award in future.
I would just caution us for using those words because that would be like discriminating against them every time before they come up. I don't know. You tell me if it's illegal, because it seems like that's what we're about to try to do.
Yeah. So when a bid comes out, we want to be fair and open. So they will get a chance to bid on it. But, among all the categories that we use for evaluation, supplier responsiveness is also a critical piece. And, at the end of the day, they may still win, even after scoring low on a particular category. But then we have evaluated, we have factored in, the past history when we made an evaluation for the supplier.
Okay, I like the way you just answered that because I would just caution us for singling out folks. Thank you.
And see, Lewis, I just add, we're not disqualifying them from bidding on future work. We're documenting their performance, and I'm glad that we reached a mediation with them on this matter, and we look forward to seeing them bid on future projects.
Yeah, and I heard y'all say that. I was just making sure Councilmember Hillis said something that was a little different. I was just trying to clear it up. Thank you.
All right, there's been a motion to approve in a second. I do have a kind of a process question. This strikes me as being a legal issue, not to give Mr. Hillis's committee more work, but why didn't his committee get first crack at looking at this and then it comes here?
Chairman Shook, Roger Bandari. So there were a couple of ways we could have done this. We could have done it as a settlement resolution, or we could have done it as we're doing now as a contract amendment. Since we followed the terms of the contract, and this is the process laid out in the contract, we thought it best to follow the contract amendment process. We haven't gone apart from the contract yet in this matter.
Okay. Well, all right, there's been a motion made and seconded. I'm reluctantly inclined to support it based on the fact that it was an agreed-upon process that ended up with this outcome. So if there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
Mr. Chair, please repeat the mover and the seconder.
Yeah, it was Juan and Hillis.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, items approved. That takes us to 22R4193, resolution by utilities, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an IGA with South Fulton on behalf of Watershed for the purpose of providing construction services related to the City of South Fulton's sidewalk project as listed, Danforth Road sidewalk project in the amount not to exceed $31,048.51. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from, et cetera. Commissioner.
Good morning. Gita Browning, Commissioner, Department of Watershed Management. Purpose of this legislation is to request funds in an amount of not to exceed $31,048.51 for construction services relating to City of South Fulton sidewalk project along Danforth Road from Rehoboth Circle to Cascade Road. The scope of work for Watershed includes adjusting, relocating, and replacing 10 linear feet of 3/4-inch water service lines, 14 meter boxes, 3 water valve boxes, 4 fire hydrants, and other appurtenances to accommodate the project. Therefore, this legislation is requesting the required construction services funding to perform the required utility relocation work. Maps should have been included in your packet, subject to your questions.
So the linear length of this project is 10 feet?
Yes, a small linear feet of 3/4 inch.
There are 4 hydrants in that 10 feet?
I'm not sure about the exact location of the hydrants, but
Just questions, that's what the note, staff note just
I doubt that they're.
I doubt it as well.
Yeah.
Motion to approve by Juan, second by Lewis. If there's nothing else, let's open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, item passes unanimously, which brings us to 22R4194, resolution by utilities authorizing the author or its designee to exercise the third renewal option for the contract indicated, which is eBuilder software support and training services with eBuilder, Inc. on behalf of Watershed for a term of 1 year, effective November 1 of this year through October 31st of next, in an amount not to exceed $270,759.72. All contracted work being charged to and paid from, etc. Commissioner.
Good morning. Nikita Browning again. Under resolution number 20R3004, City of Atlanta entered into SPS 1200-145 eBuilder software support and training services with eBuilder, Inc. on behalf of DWM. eBuilder is a software as a service and has been used by the department as a program management information system to manage its $1.2 billion capital improvements program. The PMIS software is used to track and maintain project documents for all capital projects. for the entire duration of each project, facilitate communication among project participants, contractors, including turnaround time with regard to responses and approvals, such as submittals, transmittals, drawings, logs, requests for information, work authorizations, change orders, etc. Our users, including vendors, are pleased with the performance of the software. They found the software easy to navigate through. The documentation folder is well structured, so it's easy to learn and has functionality. And so the software makes it easier for them to manage documents. The purpose of this legislation is to approve the third renewal of the contract covering the period of November 2022 through October 31st, 2023, in the amount that's requested, subject to your questions.
Ms. Swan.
Simple question. This fourth renewal that we're doing, is the dollar amount consistent with the first 3 years of the contract?
I would have to go back and take a look at that. I believe that the first year was around about that amount, maybe a little bit less.
What about the subsequent 2 years?
Should have been around the same. I can get that for you if you're interested to know.
That's fine. Yeah, I won't hold this legislation up, but yeah, if you could get that to me, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, first by Juan, second by Lewis. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, item is favorable. Any other action items?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Commissioner Wiggins, let's get the quarterly report. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Boone.
Yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Deputy Commissioner Satterwhite. I've never seen you in person, but you are extremely responsive to the seniors in the Peyton Road community. So just wanted to thank Deputy Commissioner Satterwhite. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner, you're up. If the committee doesn't object, I'm going to invite you to feel free to condense this, but go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Chairman Shook and committee members. Al Wiggins, Commissioner of Department of Public Works. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present the FY22 Q4 report. Brief table of contents. I'd like to start off this morning by announcing a few accomplishments. One is a key hire, which is the Director of Fleet Services, Mr. Craig Mims, who comes to us with years of experience. Mr. Mims' most recent position was that of an Assistant City Manager. Previously, he serves as a GM and CEO of a full-service utility commission and as a Public Works Director for nearly 20 years. Yes, sir. Immediately before coming to the City of Atlanta, he worked with the City of Chamblee. Yes. So we're very proud to bring Mr. Mims on board. As I mentioned to you before, we're looking for a business manager to consult with our fleet professionals. He arrived last week, and he's already come to the organization with a lot of positive ideas of how to get the department back on its feet. We've also extended offers to 2 deputy director positions. One is an internal hire, and the other is an external position as well. We're also looking to fill other senior management positions within the Fleet Service Division as well. Okay, a few other accomplishments during this time period. We work with APD to purchase 40 pursuit vehicles. These vehicles are extremely difficult to locate. We spent a lot of time and exhausted a lot of effort finding these cars. Typically, we order cars, and they're assembled from the time of purchase. We were able to find 40 cars that were available, and the only thing that we needed to do was upfit the cars with the communication devices and the lights. And so the police department was very appreciative of that effort and being able to obtain the vehicles. We also purchased 8 additional rear-loader trucks to add into our inventory of our aging fleet of vehicles, which is an ongoing challenge keeping our vehicles on the road. We also purchased 2 mobile surveillance cameras that have been a very popular tool to deter illegal dumping. We have not had a lot of success of capturing footage of illegal dumping, but it has been a significant deterrence, which we actually prefer. We launched a right-of-way maintenance mobile application, which we'll go into a little bit more detail a little bit further into the presentation. KABC, Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission, was awarded the Transparent Diamond Award through our ethics division here in COA. And we also achieved a 96% passing rate in our CDL training program, which we're very proud of. This is a citywide program where we provide CDL training to commercial drivers, potential commercial drivers in-house. We'll also talk about the in-house production of mobile surveillance cameras that's currently underway. Okay, moving on to solid waste services. Approximately Q3, the latter part of Q3 of last year, we established a service delivery division where we began monitoring our service delivery levels. There was a slight decline during the fourth period of FY22, and that was mainly due to the absence of an employee that provides a redundant service of reviewing some of our work orders. We realized that 9% drop solidified the need for that position. We've addressed that problem, and the numbers have risen since this reporting period occurred. All right, a few operational updates again for solid waste services. We mentioned the 8 reloader garbage trucks. Again, this has helped significantly. We deploy about 60 vehicles per day. And again, we have an aging fleet, so this is a welcome addition to our solid waste collection. We actually, this picture, this photograph that you see is part of a truck dedication that Pastor Sean Smith, Senior Advisor in Mayor Dickens' cabinet, performed the truck dedication. We wanted our employees to know the seriousness and the significance of us being able to have such a huge capital investment, and they're certainly appreciative of being able to have the new equipment to operate. We're currently awaiting the delivery of 5 ASL refuse trucks. These are the automated trucks with the automated arm that will physically grab the cans. The photograph below you will see is an image of a service area map that was born out of a feasibility study. We needed to understand how much of the city we can canvass with these automated side loader trucks. And so we determined approximately 88% of the city can be canvassed with these side loader trucks, which is a pretty significant discovery. As you know, the ergonomics of performing curbside collection is pretty hard on the body of our employees. And so these vehicles will help to provide some level of relief to the extent that the staffing required to perform this service is reduced approximately 66% for each vehicle. But the biggest takeaway is the efficiency achieved through the use of these trucks and the safety of our employees certainly improves. There's a brief snapshot of the tonnage that's collected for curbside collections. You'll see numbers for all of our service areas. These services involve solid waste collections, recycling, and yard trimmings. Okay, so here's a brief snapshot of Operation Clean Sweep. We've used the term Operation Clean Sweep over the past several years, and primarily in name only. Mayor Dickens, during his first week in office, he expressed the importance of cleaning up the city and achieving a uniform appearance throughout the city, to the extent that he has been out on the right-of-way himself picking up trash along with some of our senior leadership. We're pleased with the progress that we're making through Operation Clean Sweep. There's certainly room for progress. We're not satisfied with the results that we're seeing today, but we're certainly pleased with the effort that's been placed by our workers who are out there on the right-of-way every day trying to improve the appearance of the city. Okay, as you're aware, we have 4 deactivated landfills in the city of Atlanta. Although the landfills are deactivated, we still put a lot of work in maintaining these landfills, and certainly there's a cost associated with that effort. All of the landfills, with the exception of one, have met our requirements as far as the escape of methane gases. I believe Key Road was the only site that was slightly out of tolerance. We're working in conjunction with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division to reduce those levels. All right, moving on to bulk collections. Okay, so during the time period of this report, we received approximately 9,200 requests. Nearly 7,300 of those requests were filled during that time period. And so this doesn't mean that the remainder of the requests were not accomplished. It means that the remainder of the requests were completed after the reporting period. And the majority of those were within the service level agreement. We also have organized the items that we commonly receive complaints on, and if you look at the quadrants of how we service our communities, directly next to it, you'll see the items that we commonly pick up in those areas. Moving on to Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission. As you can see, the Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission is still engaged with our community through beautification efforts and cleanup efforts. You'll see a list of projects that were accomplished during this reporting period. Again, we're very proud of the Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission for the Transparent Diamond Award received through the Office of Ethics for transparent reporting. All right, moving on to innovation and technology, excuse me. So we recently completed a trash receptacle study. We have several trash receptacles along the curbside. We have approximately 2,200, a little bit above 2,200, in fact, trash receptacles there at curbside. And we're, through a contractual agreement, we're obligated to service a little bit over 300 of MARTA's bus stop shelters. And so we found the need to really conduct an analysis of these trash cans. I know many of you have received requests from your constituents about the installation of additional trash cans. And so rather than randomly placing trash cans, we wanted to come up with a strategy. Some time ago, we evaluated all of our roads to understand the level of litter on each road, and the criteria extended from roads that were heavily littered, moderately littered, and lightly littered. And so the map that you see at the bottom portion of this slide represents the installation or location of some of these cans. And so we're in the process of correlating the location of the cans and the conditions of the roads to understand if we need to install additional trash cans or decrease the spacing of the trash cans. So it sounds strange to say that we're excited about a trash can study, but we really need to understand the investment that is associated with these cans to the extent of understanding how much it costs us to service each can to ensure that we have adequate staffing. Okay, so this photograph, the three photographs at the bottom of the screen, you'll see our Fleet Services Division. We are in the process of fabricating mobile surveillance cameras in-house. This is a very unique set of circumstances that we have this level of expertise in-house. The trailer that you see that they're working on was completely fabricated in-house. They purchased the steel, and we anticipate that we will have nearly 12 mobile surveillance cameras before the close of the year. I think it's also important to note that the technology that's placed on these trailers will far exceed the 2 surveillance cameras that we purchased earlier this year. And so our anticipated fabrication cost is going to be approximately 25% of what it would be to purchase the cameras outright. So I'm pretty proud of our team. I'm pretty proud of them being willing to be innovative and find solutions to a problem that occurs citywide. This will be extremely helpful as we establish a operations center where we will monitor these surveillance cameras for illegal dumping. Having these cameras is, it's a great tool to have, but they really need to be monitored for us to really understand when the illegal dumping activity occurs. So we will have a monitor that will be an array of monitors that we will be able to monitor activities and locations where we experience a high volume of illegal dumping. Okay, so also we created an app in-house in partnership with AIM. This app was created to allow us to really monitor and score the work that's being performed by our in-house staff and our vendors. Last week, we went through a training session with our vendors. They're on board with using this app. This app will actually allow us to score the work that's being performed by our vendors. Just to provide context to the level of maintenance that we provide on our right-of-ways, we have approximately 1,300 miles of right-of-way. We service each side of every road, so that's about 2,600 miles. So just keep in mind that's the equivalent of traveling from Atlanta to San Francisco. So although, again, we haven't achieved the results that we're looking for, I'm proud of the effort that our folks have expended. Considering the resources that they have available, we have also purchased additional vehicles, landscaping vehicles, that were a fraction of the cost of our previous vehicles that are capable of performing the same level of work and that do not require a commercial driver's license to operate. So that also helps with our recruitment efforts to find crew leaders to deploy staff to various locations throughout the city. Again, it's just another testament of the work that's being done by our folks and the innovative practices that they're finding to address to address problems that we have with recruitment and our vehicles. Okay, so we've been in discussion for quite a while to find a solution to ensure that we can properly route our vehicles. We have vetted several routing software programs. In conjunction with the Department of Procurement, we're prepared to provide a final recommendation to the CUC. The recommended vendor is being reviewed, and the proposed contract is being reviewed by the IPRO team. We anticipate that we will present that recommendation to you by the 13th of September. Okay, the Office of Fleet Service. As I mentioned, we've hired a new director. We're looking at the Office of Fleet Service as a whole, just really starting with the health status of our fleet. We've been working with our team to really just to provide a comprehensive analysis. Our current model is the buy and hold strategy, where we purchase vehicles outright. We don't believe that model is the right model citywide. We're looking at possible lease options. Going down to our police fleet, over 65% of our police fleet has extended its life cycle. And so we're looking at reducing the life cycle to our public safety vehicles to approximately 3 years. We continue to struggle with vehicle readiness in the area of public safety, particularly in APD. And that situation will remain fluid until we're able to introduce new vehicles into their fleet. So again, we're looking at a replacement program for vehicles outside of public safety that should not exceed 5 years, but we have to look at each vehicle individually. There's not a standard life cycle for equipment. We have a lot of specialized equipment. We maintain nearly 6,000 pieces of equipment for the entire city. And so each piece of equipment or vehicle has its own unique need, and we recognize that. And so therefore, we're taking a different approach to the procurement and maintenance of our vehicles. It's a brief snapshot of our performance in the Office of Fleet Services during FY22. the fourth quarter. It's a brief snapshot of our organizational chart. A few of the key hires have been added to this org chart. Okay, moving on to our staffing position. For the Office of the Commissioner, we're about a 63% filled. We've extended a few offers for leadership positions in the Office of the Commissioner this past week. In the Office of Solid Waste Services, we're 82%. I believe our current numbers that we have reached over 90%. I would like to extend a big thanks to Commissioner Norman and Mr. Gibson, our HR client manager. It takes a tremendous amount of work to rise from 82% to the 90% level, which has helped us tremendously. Our goal is to maintain a 95% staffing level, which is very challenging in this environment for recruitment. The Office of Fleet Services, we're at a 73% level. I think that level that number is still consistent with where we are today. We did receive a lot of interest with the recent job fair that was held here at City Hall. We are engaging our talent acquisition team to understand if we really need to go outside of the city to hire a professional recruitment firm. Our vehicle technicians, recruiting vehicle technicians is such a specialized trade to recruit from, and so we're seriously considering the option of hiring a outside firm to assist us with that effort. In the area of finance, we completed the year slightly under budget in all areas with the exception of solid waste, primarily because of the need to offer overtime due to staffing issues and seasonal vacancies that occurred during that time period. Okay, moving on to our safety division, as I mentioned, we have a CDL training program. Again, another effort to be innovative with our challenges with recruiting commercial drivers. Again, this is a citywide program. We train employees all throughout the city. That spans from the fire department to the Department of Watershed, which is a great partnership and a much-needed service that's provided. And we're proud to say that we have approximately a 96% passing rate. Just a brief snapshot of the safety trainings that are conducted. Again, the occupational hazard that's associated with our fleet division, our curbside collections division, is very high. Therefore, we're pretty aggressive with our training efforts. Okay, moving on to the most important piece of this presentation is our frontline heroes. You'll see here we have 2 employees that received a Safe Driver Award from our Office of Risk Management. This is very important to me. They spend a significant amount of time in their vehicles, and every time they get behind the wheel, the likelihood of being involved in an accident increases. And it says a lot when we have employees that go several years without being involved in one accident, regardless if it was an at-fault accident or not. And so it's worthy of recognition. And again, we're very proud of Mr. Maurice Henry and Ms. Rontillo Murphy. So in the center of this slide, you'll see a snapshot from a social media site that's titled ATL Scoop. If you all know anything about ATL Scoop, the footage that's posted on ATL Scoop is typically not positive. It's about things that we typically are doing wrong in city government. This particular clip was published by a resident that really acknowledged the work that was being done by our folks and really appreciative of the pace and the professionalism that took place during that time. Also, we would like to offer kudos to Mr. Martez Moore, who developed a relationship with a 2-year-old in District 9. And so the 2-year-old looks forward to seeing the garbage truck on their service day. Mr. Moore, out of his own pocket, purchased a replica of a garbage truck and gave it to the young man. And again, this is just a sampling of the work that our folks do on a daily basis. It's not a one-off situation. It's not all-encompassing, but it's just an instance where they're caught doing the right thing, which they do on a daily basis. On a more sad note, we would like to announce the passing of Mr. Malcolm Barnes, who worked with the Office of Solid Waste and the City of Atlanta for nearly 30 years. Mr. Malcolm Barnes passed away while working with us. Another employee who recently passed while in the process of submitting his retirement paperwork. So it's a tremendous loss for the department. This work is hard work, and it's, again, as I mentioned, it's very brutal on your body. And so we would be remiss to not mention the passing of Mr. Barnes. Last but not least, I would like to send a huge shout out to the hard-working women and men of the Department of Public Works who work tirelessly every day to make sure that they provide core services and keeping our city clean and operable. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Should you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Wan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Two quick questions. The one on the finance, the numbers that you presented, $90 million, that's for just the fourth quarter alone, correct? That's not the aggregate for the entire year?
Yes, so that's the fourth quarter of the budget year. So that is basically wrapping up that year.
You mentioned that we were a little over on solid waste and under on the other, but for the year, how are you landing for all four quarters? Are we under or over budget? And I guess what I'm getting at is I know that we had to lean on overtime as well as contract services to help you achieve your work because of the pandemic and all that, but financially, where are we landing?
Yeah, so that number accurately represents, or it's approximately represents where we finish. Of course, at the conclusion of the year, we have to reconcile certain invoices. We did have a few additional expenditures in the Office of Fleet Services, but I don't believe that we exceeded those numbers by more than 5%, and that's.
All right, yeah, I think yours is a department that I think would have been hit pretty hard because of all the supplemental actions you had to take to do service delivery. So, okay, well, we'll see when the fourth quarter, the full year number comes out. And my second quick question is around the app that y'all developed. I think that's fantastic, but I'm hoping that somehow or another, I'm always nervous when departments are just developing apps and they're not talking to each other, because to me, the information that's getting gathered there either should feed directly back to 311 or vice versa, so that it's not just another one-off data collection point that doesn't influence or inform other operations.
Councilmember Wan, that's a great point, and we really struggle with that. As you know, the city is looking at purchasing an enterprise application software that will interface with through APIs with other software programs. What we really wanted to make sure is that this app captured one thing and one thing only, and it did that well. We're often enticed to add additional features onto an app. We wanted to make sure that the app did not crash because we added functions onto the app that it was never intended to be. And so that's a great point. And considering that we are looking to subscribe to an enterprise application software, this may not be a permanent solution, but this is a tool for us to be able to address issues that we face today.
I mean, I appreciate the initiative. That, I mean, obviously you had a need and you had to meet it, but maybe this will just be kind of a message over to AIM, is that, the risk of all the different units developing all these different apps is that we ultimately end up with something that all of them can't feed into, and that doesn't necessarily do us any good as well. But I commend you on the initiative.
Great point.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the updates, Commissioner Wiggins. Get to the easy stuff first. Know you had a recent job fair. What was the success of that job fair, and how was it advertised?
You know, I would have to ask our HR client manager to provide those numbers. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to provide those numbers this morning. Mr. Gibson, do you have those numbers available? And if not, we can.
I can get those numbers. I don't have it. It was a citywide job fair. Held right here. Okay, we'll just submit that later. Some praise for your solid waste collections. I've not gotten a lot of complaints about those. I know you mentioned the SLA did go down to 90%, but I haven't really noticed that. One complaint I am continuing to receive on the collection side is the time that it takes to get replacement bins. As you notice, as you mentioned, this is a rough job, and the bins are treated pretty roughly too. And they break often. Even just for an example, constituent of mine had requested this multiple times through 311. I submitted it to DPW, and it was stated just to me a couple days ago that it's still, even after I submitted it, it was still 3 weeks out. I know y'all have bins and are out doing this, because I did thankfully see one of the large trucks carrying the bins around delivering them yesterday morning, I believe. So what is the state of that service and that bin availability? Because I know historically there's been some shortages.
Yes, sir. So we, the SLA for the issuance of a new trash bin is 7 days, which we try to not, come close to 7 days. We think our goal is to get it out the following day. A large part of our struggles had to do with the operation of the equipment. We had a few trucks that went down, and so we had to work extended hours to provide that service. We also have experienced problems with aging bins, and so therefore our teams have gone out to conduct assessments of our bins to proactively replace bins that are in disrepair or could potentially result in damage due to missing handles or wheel assemblies that aren't working properly. So that was just a partial assessment. We're looking at bringing on an outside consultant to do a comprehensive review of our trash bin receptacles, not only the condition, just to provide a count of the amount of trash receptacles that we have per household. As you know, we adopted a new ordinance and fees that are associated with the amount of trash bins that each household has. And so we really need to get a real understanding of what's out there from a standpoint of inventory. We don't have those numbers because those cans could have been purchased outright for various uses. We have some of our citizens, for whatever reason, they like to store their firewood in some of our bins. And so we have issued those bins for primarily, obviously, solid waste, curbside collection purposes, but the inspection serves a twofold purpose, analyzing condition of those bins and getting an accurate count of how many we have in our inventory.
Related to that, and I've been in conversations with Watershed and planning about the need to update their fees. Watershed is kind of two steps ahead of everyone, as they've already started that study, and I understand legislation is coming in a two-step process. I believe the last time I checked, the cost of that bin, or the cost that we charge people, is $60. What is the true cost of one of those bins? And it's the bigger question is, I imagine it has been a while since DPW updated their fees, other than the solid waste fee. I believe you have other fees. When will those be updated?
That's a great question. So I believe the cost is circa $70, which represents the actual cost, but it does not represent the handling cost, if you will, as far as delivery. So every task that's performed in DPW, we're trying to determine the cost of actually delivering the can, not just the asset. So there isn't any subsidy provided by the city for the cost of those cans, so the citizens outright pay for those cans.
Another problem that I've gotten communication about, it's great, we're going to the ASL automated side loader trucks to reduce the workforce needed. So they can handle other much needed projects in DPW, but one is they're not completely emptying the bins. I know some, I've seen the truck, sometimes you got to, shake it a little bit when you get it at the top. So just keep that in mind, and maybe some retraining is needed to make sure those bins are completely emptied. Got a slight update on fleet services. I would ask, as you have sent over before, a report detailing police. Would like to add fire to that as well, given I'm the public safety chair, as to how many units they have in fleet services, including the numbers at dealerships. And on that point, do you have those numbers offhand? And how have the dealerships' services improved?
Yes. So the dealerships, the performance of the dealerships have remained consistent as before. So as a strategy, we're working with the APD's Chief Administrative Officer to add additional repair shops into our network. So currently we have about 112 vehicles that are out for service. A third of those vehicles are out due to vehicle accidents. 6% of the vehicles that are under repair at our shop are awaiting labor. About 27% of the vehicles that are under repair at our shops are awaiting parts. And so, again, this number, there's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes we can reduce these numbers down to 90. And just because of the age of the vehicles, we have had occurrences to where we've had more than a dozen vehicles that have been brought in over the course of a weekend. And so the situation is fluid, and the only way that we really can stabilize this situation is to bring in additional vehicles. The 40 vehicles that are scheduled to onboard here soon will help our bottom line as far as being able to improve vehicle readiness. As a strategy, again, we are really trying to provide very consolidated services in our fleet division due to the vacancies that we have. There are some skill sets that some of the senior techs have that we don't currently have in-house as far as the numbers of mechanics that have the skill sets. So we're looking at performance, and then we measure. And over the past 6 months, we've been pretty aggressive at looking at other options. So again, I believe that I'm certain that the newly installed director will bring some real solutions in. The second day, he realized that there was a bottleneck in the scheduling, that we probably need to really stagger our shifts. For an example, we have techs that may come in the area of 7 or 8 o'clock, and there is, some bottleneck that will really occur because there's so many mechanics in an area at once, gathering their tools, so on and so forth. And so we're looking at bringing mechanics in a little bit later in the morning, around 10 o'clock, to extend those hours should we have cars that are brought in by public safety. And once we are able to improve our staffing position, we're looking at increasing the evening hours and our weekend hours as well.
One item to bring your attention that I have forwarded to the law department. I was contacted by a constituent who is actually one of the plaintiffs on the lawsuit because she received a bill for $35 that was titled solid waste bill, and even the line item said solid waste fee, $34. Well, given my knowledge of the 911 fee, I'm like, well, that's probably the 911 fee because it's historically collected on the solid waste bill, but if my memory serves me correctly, it's individualized out, and it previously has said E911 fee, but now it says solid waste fee. I know finance is, I believe, somehow involved in that billing, but that's something that needs to be corrected.
Yes, sir, Councilmember Hillis, that's correct. That bill wasn't actually, it was an electronic statement where the resident proactively went to go search their bill through a portal provided by the tax commissioner's office, I believe. And so we have been in communication with the tax commissioner's office to make sure that there's clarity with the hard copy bills. So you're absolutely right. There was, the wording is a little ambiguous. So we're working on making sure that that's corrected.
All right, now on to the main event, right-of-way maintenance, that at least I, and I imagine my colleagues, have had major issues with. We are continually told at these committee meetings that arterials are groomed, maintained biweekly, twice a month. Connectors are trimmed once a month. I have two of my main one's a connector, I believe, one's an arterial, that haven't been cut in, I would say, 2 to 3 months. One of those is Marietta Boulevard, portion of Marietta Boulevard, and Perry and West Marietta. I brought that to the attention of DPW, from what I can tell, in mid-July, and there's been no progress since. You did communicate this morning that there's been some issues with a contractor. I would like to have some further discussions about that. I don't know if, because what you told me, if it's true, rises to a level of a crime by a contractor. So I don't know if we needed to have an executive session about that. I'll leave their name out of it until we get some clarity from the law department on that when I'm finished. But we have weeds along many arterials and connectors that are taller than I am. It's a safety issue. It's blocking signs. And I know, as I mentioned, contractors are responsible for arterials. I've seen, as we've transitioned from DPW taking care of them to contractors taking care of them, I have seen the quality dramatically decrease as well when they actually do cut them. So a little more update. What's the answer here? And then I'll have some more questions.
So, Councilmember Hillis, that's a great point. So, going back to the right-of-way app, we recognize that there's a need to ensure that the quality of work performed is commensurate with the contractual agreements that we put in place. So that app has a vendor scorecard where we will go out and assess the work that's being performed by the vendor. But let's talk about past tense, what probably has led to the overgrowth on the Marietta Boulevard and Marietta Street corridors. We have been in constant communication with the landscape provider that services that area. And in fairness to that provider, I will say that over the course of 2 weeks, should we experience substantial rain, weeds grow way faster than grass. And over 2 weeks, you can have weeds that could grow up to your waist. It will not stop growing until it grows to seed. And so in our efforts to combat whatever work is being performed, we need to be able to provide timely follow-up inspections. We can't go 2 weeks after and say that the work has not been performed. So what we have been doing as a department is to utilize our safety crews and our code enforcement team when they have the time available to perform these inspections. And it's basically an audit of a small percentage of the work that's being performed. Certainly, the contractor should have their own QA/QC team evaluating the work that's being performed, but we also recognize that we have the obligation to ensure that the taxpayers are paying for a service that we receive as well. So that Marietta Boulevard area that you mentioned, I will have to go back and take a look at the photographs that are provided by the contractor. That's part of the agreement. When the work is completed, they'll send a photograph that shows the level of work that's completed. Just keep in mind that we have corridors that are several miles long, and so they can show photographs of various portions of that road, especially if a road intersects that particular area. There may be a different quality of work beyond that particular intersection. And so we did not have the staffing to adequately follow up on all of the work that was performed. We anticipate that within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we will onboard our first full-time quality insurance inspectors. We have 2, and they will utilize this app. And more importantly, they'll utilize this app as a vendor scorecard to provide feedback. The app captures photographs, it geotags locations, and we'll be able to communicate that information back to the vendor So again, as I mentioned earlier, we have a vendor that was trained on the app, and we anticipate, and we're in a sandbox environment with the app now just to make sure that it works properly. So hopefully in the next 4 weeks, we'll have a tool and the staffing that we can utilize to provide the proper follow-up inspections.
I've sent you some, but if need be, I've been taking pictures of these 2 corridors. There are others, even in my district and across the city, that I know have issues, but I've been taking pictures of the spots on these corridors for probably over a month now to document them. So I'd be glad to share those as you work things out with this contractor. How high has this investigation risen? Is it still at your level, or?
It's still at my level. And so our special projects coordinator identified the discrepancies. We've always had questions about the frequency of the maintenance, primarily because of the complaints that we have received. But we sent an email out to the contractor last week, really identifying the billable hours in comparison to the work that's performed. We're still waiting to hear back from them. But certainly, we want to give them the benefit of the doubt to make sure that it's an oversight instead of, just incorrect billing. I'll say that. So,
Will this be a warning to them that they need to hit reply on that email pretty soon, or it's going to go above you? Because it's unacceptable if they're saying they performed work and they haven't even touched the area. So what does DPW's team handle internally? Is it like the one-off local streets, or?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we handle local streets, which is about 800 of our nearly 1,300 miles of right-of-way. We also, those crews also handle other services like assistance with the relocation of encampments. And so they're not always entirely dedicated to right-of-way maintenance. There are other duties that they perform. So the strategy, again, is our vendors handle arterials and collectors. So we have one vendor that is exclusively responsible for the arterials and another that's responsible for the collectors. Part of the reason for that strategy, Councilmember Hillis, is that our folks, they're not landscapers. They abate nuisances. So the beautification piece is not really within their wheelhouse, which was the reason that we consulted with a private landscape firm.
All right, so one more question, an issue that kind of informs what our arterials and collectors are. I asked for a list. You sent it over this morning, but I actually found it last night. I had seen it before, but couldn't recall where. So as I'm sure you know, it's actually in the city's public right-of-way manual. And I don't need you to spend time detailing what streets are in District 9. I've done that and highlighted them. So mark that off your list. But from what I can tell, this list, which the manual purportedly was updated in 2019, but looking at one of the names of the streets and their segments, when I can tell, this list of arterials and connectors was updated somewhere between 24 and 31 years ago. So one, the names need to be updated. Two, in that length of time, I would imagine that some of our current local streets may have risen to the level of a connector. Some connectors may have risen to a level of an arterial. And I know this is, I guess, the primary responsibility of ATO DOT. So I'm going to be making that request for them to update this list because, as I said, 2 to 3 decades of not updating a list of arterial and connector streets is not acceptable.
That's correct, Councilmember Hillis. A few of the streets are incorrect, and a few of the segment lengths have changed as well. I think it's also important to mention that we spend a significant amount of time maintaining state right-of-ways and other governmental assets that aren't owned by the COA because we understand that it's located within the city of Atlanta, and our residents suffer when those areas aren't serviced. So we are working, so we have approximately 60 miles of right-of-way that's owned by the state that we actively maintain. So we're trying to assign a cost that's associated with that work. And so we're still in the process of collecting a lot of data and along the lines of updating that document, we will certainly work with Commissioner Bomar to get that list updated. I'm pretty sure after hearing this will be extremely important to her. She's been great to work with, very proactive in addressing issues as well.
And then just for follow-up purposes, when can and how should we get an update on this issue with the contractor? When can you give us an update on that?
So we're hoping to hear from them today. I'll give you an update as far as their response. As you mentioned, I definitely want to consult with the Department of Law should this become an issue bigger than what we anticipate it is today. What we're hoping is just an oversight. But I will communicate with the committee as a whole as to what feedback we receive from the contractor.
Finally, I don't like to bring up these one-off issues in committee. I used Marietta Boulevard and Perry/West Marietta as examples, but how can I get those streets?
I can assure you that it will be done within the next 48 hours, if not sooner.
All right. Okay. And I'm going to defer to my colleagues, but I do have one follow-up question that I had written down that I skipped. But
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Wiggins. I want to give kudos to you and your team at DPW for the hard work, and you take my calls on Sunday morning for various issues, so I really appreciate that. I want to piggyback off of one question that Councilmember Hill has had about old and damaged bins. What's the process for getting rid of those? Because a lot of times I'm seeing that it is taking time to get new bins, but I'm also seeing that the old and damaged bins are not taken away as well, and I've been getting several calls about that also.
Yeah, really, bins that are damaged should be identified by the collectors because of the pace that they keep. Oftentimes, if they really identified every bin that was damaged, they would not be able to complete the route. So therefore, they really focus on the bins that are in severe disrepair. Should a citizen notice that their bin is damaged, they can just simply call ATL 311, and we'll arrange a time to come out and provide a replacement card.
Okay. And then, you talked about the 12 new cameras, and I'm excited to see that. I've seen how those work, specifically in District 1, and have been really great as a deterrent for illegal dumping. And you and I have had many conversations. Nothing makes my blood boil more than seeing the dumping in the communities, especially, when I'm getting calls from seniors that are upset because we've got people that don't live in our community, that don't live in the city of Atlanta, that are coming to our communities and doing the illegal dumping. What's the deployment plan for the cameras?
It's a great question. So our strategy is to deploy those cameras in the areas where we experience the highest volume of illegal dumping. Of course, we're soliciting input from each of the respective council districts. That's why we have a magic number of 12. We already have 2, so we added the additional 2 as replacement cameras should we experience any difficulties with the cameras that we're producing. Again, we're anticipating that those cameras will be completed by the close of this year. And the reason that we really moved towards this mobile surveillance camera strategy is that there's a real shortage of cameras as a whole. And so how could we leverage the use of 12 cameras throughout the city as opposed to the hundreds of cameras that we need? And so the operations center, as I mentioned, will be part of that network of cameras. We're also looking to partner with APD should they have cameras in the location of some of these hotspots. They typically don't, is the reason why those the illegal dumping activity is occurring. We've also made a connection with areas that have a heavy tree canopy that provide concealment for some of the illegal dumping activities. We're working with the Department of Parks and Rec to trim those trees to kind of open up the areas, if you will. So the overall strategy is to put those cameras in our hottest locations. And once we determine that the camera has been effective, our goal is to set up the installation of a fixed mounted camera as a permanent installation.
And you touched on my follow-up question, which was there any coordination with APD in terms of being able to go after those who are doing this? I think the cameras also, they work as a good deterrent, but if we don't get serious about enforcing and catching those that do this and prosecute them, then this is something that's going to continue to happen. And so, I hate to be so forceful, but I feel like we need to make an example out of those that come to our community and do this, because this is such a rampant problem. With APD, there is an opportunity to connect with them. And can you just elaborate a little bit more on the coordination there?
Yeah, so the coordination primarily lies with our solicitor's office. We really need to understand what type of information they need us to capture to prosecute these cases. In addition to that, we're working with our governmental affairs coordinator, Ms. Kenyatta Mitchell, to discuss possibly at the state level introducing tougher legislation that will allow us to seize vehicles or equipment that's used in conjunction with illegal dumping. She's very much open to that discussion. So as you mentioned, our biggest challenge is really capturing the activity. It's not that it's not really an appetite to prosecute these cases. We just need to have the evidence to be able to prove that the illegal dumping occurred by a certain individual. And the camera is the biggest tool that we have to date to be able to combat that crime.
And I'd urge you to maybe even, work with code enforcement. I see some telltale signs in my community. You can see somebody doing a renovation, you don't see a dumpster. A lot of times that's a sign that, where is this stuff going to go get dumped when they're done with this major renovation, if you just see the stuff sitting in a yard. So, there's different ways. I see the truck circling the neighborhood. I think there just needs to be a level of coordination to help with some of this. But, I appreciate the effort with the cameras. I know that they're a good deterrent. And so look forward to working with you to try to get those deployed around the city. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
I first want to say thank you, Commissioner Wiggins. Thank you to the Department of Public Works for all the work you've been doing in the city. In my district in particular, when I go to the barber shop, they tell me they see the difference. So I want to say first, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I then want to say, I heard you shout out two people. I want to shout out Chris Brooks, who drives the truck on my street. He came up and showed me his check one day to show me he got his premium pay, and he showed me when he didn't have his premium pay. So I want to say shout out to Chris Brooks and the new young brother, Mr. Macmillan, who did 7 years in prison before he just got a job with us, and he's been working there for about 2 months now. So I want to say I appreciate you. What I see when I see that is the Department of Human Resources and you are working to hire folks, because Chris Brooks is a person that DM'd me about his job one time before, so I feel real good about things that are going on in that department. Next, I want to say thank you for hiring Mr. Mims. One thing I know about hiring a person who was a city manager, that means that their bandwidth has been stretched and they've been focusing on a lot of things. And when you get them to focus on one thing in the department, innovation happens, which is how we got to the cameras and the trucks and folks actually in Public Works fixing this themselves, which I've only seen in the Department of Transportation, in which they created the speed task table. So I want to say I appreciate you for being innovative. The job fair last week, I know someone mentioned it. I got a lot of DMs and calls about it. People got hired on the spot. Thank you again for hiring folks. 82% to 90, from 82 to 90%. I know where we were when I first got here, and I'm big on data. I have a question for you after this. I'm super big on data, and to see that 90% is a big deal. It means that we fixed that bottleneck that was going on in HR. I want to see, is there another one now? Because some of the things I think all of us have been saying is that you've gotten to 90%. You say 95 is where you want to remain. I can see us getting there. But the city of Atlanta has grown by so much. Some areas are much more dense. I see apartments coming up all over my area. I see places where people never lived, like the Beltline coming up where people live now. Do you have and you're at 90%, 95%, which is the most we've been at in a long time. Do you feel that you have enough? Like if we're supposed to have 100 people hired in 2010, and if we're supposed to have that same 100 people hired in 2022, even though the city has grown by so much, do you feel that number that's at 100% is enough for you to fully do this, because the issues I feel like we're asking, and you're staffed up now. So some of the issues that we're having, if you're staffed up, that means we're going to have some different questions.
Right. So another great question. So far as the way that we conduct business today, I feel that if we were 100% staff, those numbers would be adequate to. So keep in mind, when I initially came on board, we increased that staffing number by 20%, the allocated positions. Our biggest challenge today is the fragility of our equipment. At any point in time, we can have a dozen trucks go down in the course of 24 hours. So we've made the investment as far as purchasing additional vehicles. But the short answer to your question is, I believe the staffing is adequate, but we also need to have the staffing in conjunction with the vehicles that are needed to perform the service. Now, if we pivot over to our special operations division, as far as our right-of-way maintenance division, we do really need to understand what the actual need is to right-size that division of DPW. As you know, we're in the process of doing a cost efficiency study. That would be the biggest tool for us to be able to identify where we need to allocate our resources. The biggest challenge for me as a commissioner is to understand how to properly staff for the one-off requests, such as, cleaning up encampments, such as, someone dumping a load of items on the road over the weekend. We don't fund those requests because they occur so infrequently, but we're in the process of doing what we need to do in order to capture that type of data.
Just being a data person and a union person, I like when people are doing the job that they were paid to do and the job that's on their paperwork. And so I know you've talked a lot about a lot of people working out of assignment. I mean, like helping, being innovative, and stretching themselves. So when you answer that question the way you did, I'm like, it's a...
Yeah, so that's another great point. And as far as what I mean by stretching an employee, the environmental service worker, for an example, that job position may involve curbside collections, but that same position also involves right-of-way maintenance. And so what I mean by stretching them outside of that capacity is that we offer them overtime to perform services that they're qualified to perform, which, for obvious reasons, they welcome. I mentioned our code enforcement and our safety teams performing follow-up inspections. They are inspectors by nature, and should the work not be performed correctly, it does have an impact on their respective areas. So although they don't typically perform that work, that is still within their scope of duties, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the other things I want to talk about was around the trash can study. How many of your, first of all, thank you for doing that study. The trash can thing is a big deal in my district, and I've just seen trash cans popping up. I'm excited to see trash cans popping up because we didn't have them at first, so I'm happy to see them popping up. And at first, I talked to you about who's supposed to collect from them, and you innovative again. They just magically start getting empty. But I'm wondering, how many trash cans are you taking care of for MARTA? Or if you don't know off top, can you let us know, and then we can come up with a bill so that we can...
Yes, sir. I think we're in the area of 300 trash cans. But keep in mind, MARTA has over 2,600 stops. And so many of those stops have trash cans and some don't. So indirectly, we are still performing the same service regardless if that debris is containerized in a waste receptacle. We're still going out picking up debris, even in locations where trash receptacles aren't placed. There's still a need for us to provide a service of waste removal.
I would like for you to, because that's stretching our City of Atlanta employees again. I know MARTA they're getting a lot of money from us. They can figure it out with some of that stuff. I know, and I appreciate you for doing it right now, but we have to find a way to hold them accountable, similar to the 60 miles of Atlanta land that don't belong to us, right? We have to find a way, because we're spending the tax dollars that we get from Fulton County to make sure we maximize our folks as much as possible. But if you're doing other folks' work. Some of the issues I have in my district, like I want some stuff pushed back. I want some trees cut down. I want to clean it up now. And so I don't see how we get to that if you're cleaning bridges for the state or if you're cleaning trash cans for MARTA. How do we get there if you...
That's a great question. A little bit over a week and a half ago, we did a ride-along with MARTA to discuss those very issues. So the 300 cans that I referenced, there is an intergovernmental agreement, part of a shelter agreement that was brokered by the city and MARTA, that we will partner in emptying those trash cans, but that's not an all-encompassing account of all of MARTA's trash cans. And so they do have additional trash cans that they empty just based on the configuration of the stop. So we have found that MARTA has been more than willing to partner with us and to come up with creative ideas. We mentioned the wildflower planting at North Marietta and Northside Drive. They expressed interest in partnering with us on that. So, we're just reaching out to various entities and large stakeholders to discuss right-of-way maintenance in front of their assets, and MARTA has been very open to that discussion.
And last suggestion with the surveillance cameras, similar to Councilmember Winston, if we can get the police to tap in with their connection devices, I think that would be really good. And once you do bring the one to District 12, please let me know where you're taking it to. That way we can work in partnership on that. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Again, thank you all so much. I want to recognize I see a lot of great people that are on the ground in the audience. I see Ms. Tracy Chambers, Deputy Commissioner New, Mr. Moses, and Ms. Kanika. I see them regularly on the ground all over this city, whether it's southeast, southwest, northwest, or northeast. One of your senior staff members, I always run into them. So I want to take this opportunity to thank them. The camera that was at Mercury Drive, where is that camera now? It moved away.
Yes, ma'am. We had to relocate that camera. Again, we have 2 cameras, and we have to use it on a rotational basis.
That was a really good camera. Peyton Place Southwest needs one of those cameras.
So, Councilmember Boone, jokingly, I told staff that we would be in trouble for moving that camera out of Mercury Drive because we know how you feel about that particular site. So, I can assure you
it really has helped. It really has helped. So, that camera has really helped. You all have quite a few passings in you all's area. I want to make sure that the city of Atlanta is still exemplifying a heart for the people and a heart for those family members that have lost their loved ones. If a person has worked for the city of Atlanta 30 years, we need to make sure that, just like in the old days, Mr. Moses and Ms. Kanika know what I'm talking about. In the old days, we would have someone from that department, whether it's watershed, whether it's HR, whether it's constituent services, or whether it's public works, to make sure that those family members have what they need. If a family asks for some food, let's try to make sure that members of the city council, the mayor's office, that we're able to provide what that family needs. That's just who I am. I truly believe in taking care of people, not just to call a florist and send a plant or a flower, but if a family member asks for some food at some point, that's something that's doable. Whether we have to do it or constituent services, the mayor's office, or whatever, let's make sure that those family members feel like we care about their loved one. 30 years of your lifetime is a long time to give somebody. We want to send letters. We want to send proclamations. We want to make sure that the city of Atlanta is represented at these particular funerals. So please assign someone to take care of the folks that lose their loved ones. It's great to see their faces up on the board, but I'd like to know that the family felt like the city of Atlanta, Georgia cared about Mr. what's his name, Barnes, that he cared about them. Also, when you go to 20 down here,
Central.
that's we got to get the sheriff involved. We got to get somebody involved because you all cannot handle that. It is way too much. We've got to get another jurisdiction. It is getting worse and worse and worse. And for us to come back to clean it up 2 days later, it's the worst I've ever seen it. There are tents there, mounds of trash. So if you all would please meet with Sheriff Patrick Labatt and see if he can offer any support. Chief Dansby, Sheriff Labatt, and your office, if we could get that cleaned up, that's an artery heading to Southwest Atlanta. We want to make sure that is clean. And lastly, if someone from your team will meet with Mr. Kenny Hill, who works for the Atlanta Food Bank, we essentially, my colleagues, our workforce is the working poor. A lot of them are the working poor. And when I have extra food boxes, I take them out and meet some of your workers, and they are very grateful. So if someone in your team could tap into, not saying that this is their job description, but I just want to see our departments care more about those folks that are on the ground, that don't have the gas cards to get to work, and that need a box of food. And Mr. Kenny Hill is working at the Atlanta Food Bank, and it'd be great if he could send some food boxes over to our workers. But again, the wonderful team, I see them on the ground. They respond to so many calls that we never hear about. They know Miss Pat Floyd by name. They know Miss Barbara Miller by name, and some of the constituent concerns that you'll never hear about. I want to again thank those individuals for responding to the citizens of Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner, two more items. I probably guess what they're about, right-of-way maintenance. So when we look at this issue, there's really two ways it can be handled. Ideally, in my mind, it's a balance between the two. One is for you all to do anything and everything regarding right-of-way maintenance. The second part is along every street in Atlanta, that frontage is owned by someone. It may be the city, it may be Fulton County, it may be the railroads, it may be private property owners. But our right-of-way manual and code enforcement ordinances, it is their responsibility to keep their frontage maintained. And I don't think we go about enforcing that enough. Using the two examples I provided earlier, Merida Boulevard, biggest offenders are the industrially zoned parcels. Prairie Boulevard, most of that is owned by the railroad, Norfolk Southern. So to relieve some pressure off us, we've still got to do the enforcement, but I would like to see more enforcement by suite of people not maintaining their right-of-ways, particularly industrial property owners. That would be like me at my house just cutting to the iron pin and say, well, I'm going to let DPW take care of the other 5. I even have my lot runs street to street, and although I hardly ever see my back frontage, it's my responsibility, and I maintain that. Right. And I think everyone needs to do that. So I would like to see some more effort from suite, and I also turn in, one-off issues to code enforcement for overgrowth on those type parcels. But what can we do to expand upon that?
Yeah, I'll certainly have to speak with the solicitor's office, being that the right-of-way is owned by the city. I am aware that there are ordinances that suggest, I'm not sure if they really mandate the maintenance of those areas because they're owned by the city. I could be off base with that, so I really need to speak with the Department of Law to get a better understanding. And as you mentioned, entities such as the railroad, we do engage them. We typically don't get the level of response that we're looking for. But while we're attempting to address those issues or prosecute the need is still there. And so we go and maintain those areas just to make sure that the appearance of the community remains intact. So I need to speak with the Department of Law to properly address that question.
Yeah, and speaking of one of the railroads, they received quite a bit of public subsidy to relocate their corporate headquarters here. So I would hope that they want to be a much better corporate citizen of the city. So I've had conversations with them, and I will continue those in my efforts there. Another point of contention, which we have did a little luncheon ride about, is areas of overgrowth that kind of exceed just weeds and grass. I believe you all, as in DPW, don't have the resources to. I've never seen y'all carrying around, brush cutters and chainsaws. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I was always told that would go over to parks because they do have a forestry division. But then there's this, roundabout go around that, oh, it's not us, it's them, it's not us, it's them. And meanwhile, I have trees and vines obstructing traffic signals and line of sight.
Yes, sir, valid point. So Commissioner Bomar and I, the new interim commissioner for ADOT, we have agreed to sit down and look at the list of services that we provide because there is some ambiguity in between the departments and who services what. And we'll include the Department of Parks and Rec into that discussion as well. And so we're just looking at the services that we provide, and we all agree that it does not make sense for us to have any redundancy in services, considering the mobilization cost. And I will say that it is certainly the pet peeve of the mayor's administration for anyone to say, it's not my job, call Watershed. And so as recently as last week, there was a situation that you mentioned that Commissioner Bomar realized that we were involved with another project, and she actually volunteered to go investigate it and address whatever issues needed to be taken care of. And so although she recognizes it probably fell under DPW's purview, she was willing to step in to assist. And so the partnership and the appetite for us all to work together is there. We just need the time to collect the data, look at the services, and come up with a strategy that is the most efficient way of handling or providing these services.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your work. I know it's a tough job, and then you get to go through this. But really appreciate you and your team and y'all's service to the city.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
One, you know that I am always grateful for you. I mean, between you, Micah, and Brittany McClure, I'm very grateful for all that you've helped us clean up in District 5. I have a couple quick questions. One, do we still have a shortage of trash receptacles, or have we finally gotten those in?
We finally were able to get a significant order, so that situation has been addressed.
So going ahead and getting some installed that we were waiting for payment, we were ready to go ahead and pay for those and awaiting installment. Can we go ahead and get that? We can re-escalate that and those can be taken care of?
Yes, and so again, we were, as far as our vehicles, which
and just for the record, I'm not
delay.
talking about trash receptacles as in front of houses. I'm talking about the receptacles in right-of-ways, public spaces that we're taking.
Okay. So, yeah, we have to, once we complete the study, we'll have an idea of where we can place the cans. And again, the catalyst for conducting the study is that the average decorative trash can is about $1,000, right? And so...
You mean our current metal ones that's hard to get the trash into in the first place?
The Victor Stanley trash cans, yes, the decorative trash cans. That's absolutely correct. And so, we're looking at it holistically. And so just to randomly place, a trash can that costs $1,000, we would run out of funding. And so the study was the basis for us determining where we would spend our funding for those trash cans.
Sorry, from my understanding, when we wrote to DPW earlier and were asking for additional receptacles, they said that we would have to pay for them, and I was of the understanding that we could pay to have additional receptacles placed in the...
That's correct. I assume that you were referring to ones that DPW would purchase. Okay.
Now, as much as I would love free trash cans from you all, I understand that I have to pay for some of them. So but my question is that can be revisited now that we have them.
Absolutely, and we need to partner with ADOT for the installation of those cams. They have to be installed in the sidewalk, and so, but the answer is yes, we can revisit that immediately.
And thank you for that. So I'll revisit that. And I was curious, so what is the current, this was mentioned before, what is the current process for cleanup, sweeps of shelters, et cetera?
So that process is handled through the mayor's office. Deputy Chief Operating Officer Burks works with Partners for Home, APD, and I think the Department of Corrections has provided some resources as well. But before those encampments are cleared, those cleanup efforts are organized through the mayor's office.
I suppose my concern is, I mean, as a city, we have limited options currently for people that are unhoused, correct? I mean, we don't have proper shelters. The ones that we've had many shut down. So my concern always with cleanups or sweeps of encampments is that, one, it leaves a lot of trash behind and we have to go clean that up, but also it just further displaces people that are just trying to survive. So I'm asking, do we have anything in place does DPW work with any agencies to assist or reach out to any agencies to assist before a sweep goes in? Is there any procedures in place for that? And that's asking a lot of you all. I understand that. I'm just trying to understand where we can offer more support.
No, the answer is yes. We work with Partners for Home before we actually go into an encampment site, but we don't proactively just go and interrupt any of those encampments for obvious reasons, but Partners for Home is the lead agency for that effort.
Correct. My question is, though, if just in issues of District 5 with sweeps of any kind, if there's ever if there's anything like that is happening in the district and I can be of assistance in getting people out there before there's any disruption, please let me know, because I would be more than happy to help. Because the last thing I would want is for that to just consistently keep happening, because that's the cycle we're trapped in now. But I was also, to bring up Councilmember Hillis and Winston's question about the dumping piece. What is the current process? I mean, I've asked for sweet officers repeatedly to come out, and we have had a situation where you've addressed where your team has, I've sent over a list of dumping sites and they're trying to regularly maintain them and it has improved. My question is, what is the current process for after there's a ticket served? I'm confused as to how everything is handled after that point.
After a citation is issued? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the violator, if identified, is expected to appear in court, I believe. And I would like to invite, I think Ms. Tracy Chapman was in the audience a little bit earlier. Tracy, do you mind coming and explaining the process of what happens after the issuance of a citation?
Tracy Chambers instead of Tracy Chapman. Tracy Chapman, I love your music.
Chambers.
Chambers?
Yes, I'm Chambers. How are you all? Once a citation is issued to the violator, it then goes over to the court system. They are given 30 days to comply. Once they comply, then the case is closed out.
Okay. And so I guess my question is, we've had a situation where there's been multiple reoccurrences after a case has been closed out. So I'm just curious as to what we can do to continue trying to, is it just that we just continue issuing citations? Or?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. I'll just keep issuing citations then.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And then just the last piece I have is just a reminder to the team that if there's an escalation coming from council members, it typically does mean, because a couple of times now I've been met with, has this been issued through 311 or have this been filed with 311? If it is coming from me or I'm certain of any of the other council members, it typically means it has been, and that we are escalating it because those procedures have failed and they're coming to us because they need help. So just asking that still be treated with the same level of with the urgency in which we are hoping it is treated, because we've had to step in and put in that request.
Understood.
Thank you.
And my last question is super simple. Every day my goal is to be a little bit better, get an inch better as a council person. And what will make me better today is if I can find out, if you can give me a schedule of when DPW is in District 12. I don't know if you have that, but if you have like, okay, on tomorrow, on the first day of the month is the day we cut Cleveland Avenue. On the third day of the month is the day we cut Metropolitan. What will make me a better council person to the folks watching at home, if I can come home with that schedule.
So we do have a right-of-way maintenance schedule. Sometimes, due to weather, that schedule will change. And we have a schedule for street sweeping activities as well. And we can furnish that to your office.
Yeah, and even if you look at it on the day it happens, because I'm gonna send it out an email to all my folks ASAP.
Yes, sir. So just understand
Write that note, y'all.
the list is not isolated to a particular district, but it does show the corridors that will be serviced within a certain time period.
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Boone, you have the final word.
Yes, Commissioner, just again, we want to help you. We want to help you. If there is something that we can do with morale, if those folks that start on a Friday and they won't get paid again until 3 weeks, we have access to food boxes and support. Whatever you all need, don't hesitate to ask for support from the Atlanta City Council members. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, we've exhausted our action items as well as ourselves and our audience. Are there any announcements or comments for the good of the order? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Send an elect.